Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to a brand spanking new live 9 p.m. Thursday the 22nd of June episode of A Big Hairy News. Kia ora to you, and so lovely to be back with you. As you will see, I'm minus one Chewbacca, but the mighty Chewbacca is currently in his Millennium Falcon somewhere in either North Otago or South Canterbury. I'm not exactly sure where the line is. I'm not exactly sure where the barrier is between those two places as he's driving to Timaru, and he's hoping to jump in when he arrives. He messaged me at about 25 past 8 going through Wamaru, which is 85 kilometres from Timaru, so we can time him. And if he gets to us much earlier than 25 past, we will know he'll be hauling Wookiee ass. Hi team, how are you? Yes, we're here. Yes, we're here. We're live tonight. It's so good to be with you. But as always, because I'm a little bit of a what is the word? Murphy's Law kind of person. Normally when Chewy's here with me, we check out the audio. I haven't had a chance to do it this morning or this evening, and it'll just be the chance that the audio won't work on the one night that he's with me. So first time we'd fired up the system in about 8 or 9 days. I'm playing a little bit of music behind me at the moment. Some chill, relaxed, cool music. And that's just really so you can tell me that you can hear it out there in Radio Land. Well, it's not Radio Land, whatever this place is called. And if you can, then we're all good to go. And it's good. Kia ora, Vicky. Hey, Raywin. Hi, Simon. Hi, Peter. Hello. Good. I can hear music. Lots of you saying that. Very good. I know it's a little bit anal of me, but, you know, I'm Irish. And so as Murphy's Law says, if it can go wrong, it will. And those days that we haven't had two of us on seems to have been those days that we had problems with sound. Now, speaking of not problems, can you see what I'm wearing? I'm going to move the microphone. Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you see it? Now, I know how I'm going to do this, but I'll show you the back. If you're listening to the audio podcast, you're going to have to jump onto the YouTube clip and have a look. See if you can see the back. See if it comes up. You have to be able to see between my shoulder blades. Hang on. There it is. Look, can you see that? Logo there. BHN. Right in the microphone's way. BHN on the back. And a little thing on the front. A Christopher Luxon, not a businessman, just a board member. Been promising you guys. Been trying to figure out. It's taken longer than we hoped to, but you will obviously be gracious, and I know you all have been, as to the last 2 weeks have been a bit of a nightmare for me, and I appreciate all the kind messages and kind words, and I appreciate you sticking with us and through those best ofs, etc. We sort of planned to be back last night, but after we had some time in Auckland for my father's funeral and a little bit of downtime, we jumped on a plane, an airline that my sister calls Junkstar for obvious reasons. We were supposed to be on the 205 flight. We turned up to the airport, and we ended up being told as we were checking in, it's been delayed to 3:55. Bugger, we thought. And as we were waiting, it got delayed to 4:55. And then we saw up on the screen 5:45. It was delayed to. We'd got there at 12:30 to check in. And at 5:45, stayed up like that for a good long time. Then all of a sudden it went to 5:35. And we thought, oh, what a blessing. They've brought it back by 10 minutes. What a blessing. How lucky we are. And then we got on the plane at 6 o'clock. I don't know why they brought it back 10 minutes. And at 6 o'clock, we got reliably informed that there was a passenger who had not checked onto the plane, but they had checked a bag. So yes, we had to remove all the bags. And we sat on the tarmac for 1 hour and ended up leaving Auckland at 7 p.m. last night. So I knew the delay was going to happen, which is why last night's show, especially the start of it, would look a bit different. And if you watch us on Twitter or Facebook, you wouldn't have got an episode last night. I apologise about that, because I was sitting in the terminal in Auckland and I'd already uploaded some episodes to, I'll come back with a bit of a cold from Auckland as well, to YouTube, so I could upload it from YouTube, but nothing else. So, uploaded it from the airport, knew I probably wouldn't make it, and didn't end up actually walking in my door until maybe 10 p.m. So, turned up to the airport at 12:30 yesterday, got on the plane at 6 o'clock, left Auckland at 7 o'clock, landed just before 9 o'clock, got home sometime around 10 o'clock. So it was a very long day, very, very long day. But so good to be back with you. Okay, guys, lots going on tonight. Now, because we've been away for a while, I know that some of you are probably, maybe you're not over the Tesla conversation, but I think there's some really important things that haven't really been talked about so much with us. Maybe there has, maybe I've missed them. I've been a little bit off the grid, obviously. But when I talked to Chewy today, I'm like, I want to just touch base with this, and Chewy's eyes lit up. And so we're going to do that as the last story. Hopefully that'll give him enough time to get to Timaru and then jump on board. We're also going to talk about, obviously, Michael Wood, who, yes, I know that this afternoon I wrote it as Michael Woodhouse in the what's coming up tonight. So one of the reasons I'm fucking glad he's gone is I can stop mixing up Michael Wood and Michael Woodhouse now. So yep, Michael Wood, and also we're going to talk a little bit about Donald Trump as well, because some really interesting goings on in America at the moment. Just back to the t-shirt very quickly. This one. Christopher Luxon, not a businessman, just a board member. There's another t-shirt that I gave to Chewy this afternoon. He may be wearing it. If he pops up, I'll leave that one to show you, to see if he brings it up. If not, you have to look at it on Monday. What we're going to do is we're going to do a drop for 2 weeks, right? Couple of t-shirts, couple of slogans, couple of colors. We're going to do a drop for 2 weeks. As long as I can figure out how to use Shopify, and I'm struggling how to use Shopify at the moment, but if I can figure it out, we'll put them up on Shopify. Well, we'll put your ability to order them on Shopify on the 1st of July. It'll be a 2-week block, and then they go away forever in their current form. They may come back as specials with different colors on it, but in their current form, they'll go away forever. You'll have 2 weeks to order them, and then we'll post them all out to you on the 15th of July. So there'll be a 2-week drop. You'll be able to purchase them. These t-shirts, which are really nice, actually. I got this today. It's a really nice, good quality t-shirt, and hoodies as well. Probably, don't quote me on this, but probably delivered to your door, $50 for a t-shirt, including delivery, and probably $80 for a hoodie. Big, nice, comfy hoodie. Same slogan, same colors, but that's what we're going to do. So you'll have 2 weeks to order them. You'll pay for them in those 2 weeks, and then they'll be delivered. Now, what that does for us, obviously, just being really blunt with you, is we don't make any money off this at the moment. So we don't have like, oh, we'll chuck $500 for the t-shirts and then sell them. So basically, you're pre-purchasing them. You're coming on board, you're saying, yes, we want to support what these guys are doing, but actually, can you imagine if a bunch of people were wearing this t-shirt, Christopher Luxon, not a businessman, just a board member, like at a rally that Christopher Luxon was at? Wouldn't that be the coolest thing in the world? And you're doing it to support what we're doing, and also because you want some of the stuff. You'll pay for it first, you'll get it within a couple of weeks. So you pay for it in the first 2 weeks of July, you get it put in the post about the 15th of July. It comes out to you. Simple, and that's what we're going to do. Now, the prices are based on what you guys told us, about $50 for a t-shirt, and it'll probably be about $80 for a hoodie. And yeah, that's what we're going to do, and we're going to start working on it. The only thing when I say about, I just have to check the pricing for getting them sent to anywhere in New Zealand. If you're watching this or listening to this from internationally, that won't be included for international deliveries, the $50 and $80. But I don't care. I'll send them anywhere in the world. You'll just be charged whatever it costs on top if you want to get one. Right, anyway, let's get going. I actually want to start with something very different, which is something I saw today, and I think it's the best news story of the world. Not that face there. But if you're a fan of South Park, I wanted to show you this. This is my one good news story before we get into the rest of the day. If you're a fan of South Park, you'll know what Casa Bonita is. Guess what? Casa Bonita is coming back.
It's big, and it's pink. And for decades, Casa Bonita was Colorado's go-to pleasure palace for kids.
Usually when we came here, it was a birthday. I felt exotic when I came here. It felt like I had gone away.
And since those halcyon days, Casa Bonita has occupied an extraordinary amount of space.
Wow, Casa Bonita! Woo-hoo!
In the psyches of South Park creators and Colorado natives.
This is a cool story.
Matt Stone and Trey Parker.
They're reopening Casa Bonita in real life.
Building, we have named our office Casa Bonita. It's like fate.
Fate would mean Casa Bonita's closing down and bankruptcy. They had to buy it.
And I said, yes. And he goes, I know, but don't get to, we don't know yet. I'm like, yes. And I was just like, we're doing that, yes.
To be kind, Casa Bonita had seen better days. It was a wreck. The idea of these two guys buying it was funny, a kind of extravagant gag, or so we thought.
So this is without irony, then?
It's not a joke, and that's the thing, is it had become a joke, and we were sad that it had become a joke, because you could see what this place was in the 70s when they built it. You know, they were trying to make a little Disneyland here.
We're here! Casa Bonita! Oh man, this is gonna be so great!
20 years ago, Parker and Stone immortalized their love for Casa Bonita in a South Park episode.
I feel like Cartman a lot here, just going in, and we could do this, and we could do that, we could do that.
It really is. Watching Trey walk around and the emotional roller coaster of doing this, he's feeling it as much as Cartman would.
So there you go. That's the greatest news story of the day. Casa Bonita is a real restaurant. It's always been a real restaurant in Colorado. The guys from South Park have bought the rundown Casa Bonita and they're reopening it. And obviously they're worth in excess of $300 million each, so they're going to do it right. And I think it says later on in that story, we're not going to play the whole story, that they'd have to have about 6 million people eating there a night for it to pay for itself. So they are actually doing it as a love. And apparently the queues are already out the door. It hasn't opened yet, but if you go to Colorado, Casa Bonita looks like it's going to be a place that you absolutely have to go. I haven't loaded up our fantastic Patreons for tonight. Thank you if you're a patron. I might do it at the end of the show if I get time. I haven't got around to it this time around. But the other thing is also because we've been away for a best part of a week, we haven't had any audio podcasts either. So if you're an audio podcast listener, then welcome back, and I'm sorry you haven't had any for the last few days. I made a few errors along the way, but to be honest with you, not to be too dramatic, I have been an emotional and a mental wreck for the last week or so, and some things have slipped through the gaps. So I meant to upload the best ofs to the audio podcast as well, and I forgot. Just like last Thursday was supposed to be the first best of, and I just forgot. So that's why there wasn't one last Thursday. So I apologize about a few gaps in the place, but Guy, I know you're still with us, and I appreciate it. So what I was going to say is, if you've been a podcast listener, audio listener, thank you. And if you haven't been, then this is a good time to sign up for it, because we'll have dropped completely off in the charts, and we need to get back up there to help us get to where we need to get some more guests on towards election season. Right, let's get into it, shall we? I'm calling this a Trump date. Why is this called a Trump date? Because it's like a Trump update. It's the Trump date. And we are going to have a look at what's been going on, because what we're learning is the more Trump opens his mouth, the more likely he is about to get convicted of crimes. He's been accused of crimes. He's been charged with crimes. But the more he speaks, the more he looks like he is about to get convicted once it goes to court, because what's happening is his own words, what he is saying either in secret recordings or in interviews, are actually admitting to crimes that he has committed. Let's have a look at a couple of clips for you. So there's a couple of really interesting clips that have come out in the last couple of days about what's going on, especially in a interview with Bret Baier on Fox, where basically Trump has been admitting to crimes. Let's have a look what he's been saying.
I have every right to have those boxes. This is purely a Presidential Records Act. This is not a criminal thing. In fact, the New York Times of all had a story just the other day that the only way NARA could ever get this back, would be please, 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 could we have it back?
And they
please,
asked for that.
Because they have no, we
they
were
did
talking.
Ask for it.
No, and
they said,
I gave
can you
them
give the
some,
documents back?
and we were talking.
And then they said they went to DOJ to subpoena you to get them
Which
back.
they've never done before.
Right.
So they've never subpoenaed a president before, because you know why, eh? Because no president's ever done this before. So Trump is saying, look, me, I'm a victim. They've never done this before. Yeah, they've never done it before because they've never needed to.
Well, why not just hand them over then?
Because I had boxes. I want to go through the boxes and get all my personal things out.
So he's also basically admitting he had the boxes and he took them away. So that's all now on record, and he can't, like a lawyer can't diffuse that, because he's admitting to it. He probably couldn't have denied it anyway, but he's now saying, yes, I took the boxes. Yes, I had the boxes. So he's admitting to all these things that he's being accused of.
I don't want to hand that over to NARA yet. And I was very busy, as you've sort of seen.
Yeah, but according to the indictment, you then tell this aide to move to other locations after telling your lawyers to say you'd fully complied with the subpoena when you hadn't.
But before I send boxes over, I have to take all of my things out. These boxes were interspersed with all sorts of things, golf shirts, clothing, pants, shoes. There were many things. I would say much more, not that I know of, but everything was declassified.
And this is obviously the crux of it. Now, you're going to have to bear with me a little bit tonight, because I am a little bit sick. So there's going to be a few coughs and drinks of water and nose blows and stuff. So he's saying everything was declassified, right? That's a really important part to check through. The interview goes on where he's then kind of challenged by Bret Baier as to this recording we've heard of. I don't think anyone's heard the recording yet, but it's been cited in evidence. I mean, anyone in the public. It's been cited in evidence as to him saying that there was unclassified things. So he's claiming publicly that things were classified, even though we know about this recording. Let's have a listen.
According to the indictment, you were here at Bedminster on July 21st, 2021, after you're no longer president, and you were recorded saying that you had a document detailing a plan of attack on another country that was prepared by the U.S. military for you when you were president. The Iran attack plan. You remember that?
Ready?
You were recorded.
It wasn't a document.
Okay.
I had lots of paper. I had copies of newspaper articles. I had copies of magazines.
I know. This is specifically a quote. You're quoted on the recording.
So this is the quote. This is really important because this is what this is what's reported to have been said. This is what the indictment says. So this is what a legal paper says on the recording, even though we haven't seen the recording yet. He told individuals the plan was highly confidential and secret. Trump also said, quote, as president, I could have declassified it and, quote, now I can't, but it's still a secret. We've said all the way through. It's kind of like that, I don't know, that teenager that everyone hates that's trying to get in with the cool kids. You know what I mean? The other thing about this is his argument that he's making to Brett Biernaur about it's newspaper clippings. It's this, it's that. None of that needs to be declassified. That's all public record. So a newspaper clipping doesn't need to be declassified, so you can see it's just a red herring pointing off to the side. So let's have a listen. And I know most of you have probably seen or heard of this, but there's a few other things I'm going to... You know what we do? We get all the things and we bring it into one place for you to understand the whole picture.
Saying the document was secret, adding that you could have declassified it while you were president, but, quote, now I can't. This is still secret, highly confidential. And the indictment cites the recording and the testimony from people in the room saying you showed it to people there that day. So you say on this, on tape...
It says just the opposite.
That you can't declassify it, so why have it?
When I said that I couldn't declassify...
If you missed that, this is classic Trump. Trump says that, see the stuff in here? He says, that water? It's wet. No, it's dry. It's not wet. He just said, I said the opposite of that. So there's a recording that has him saying one thing according to court records. We'll hear the recording at some stage. And Trump's response right here, if you missed it because they were talking over each other, was, that's not what I said. I actually said the opposite. It's a classic Trump thing. And now MAGA will hear that and they'll just say, no, he didn't say that. He said the opposite because Trump has said it.
It now. That's because I wasn't president. I never made any bones about that. When I'm not president, I can't declassify.
And that's what you said. You didn't declassify it.
I said no. I said I couldn't.
Could have
but that wasn't a document, Brett. There was no document. That was a massive amount of papers and everything else talking about Iran and other things. And it may have been held up or may not, but that was not a document. I didn't have a document per se. There was nothing to declassify. These were newspaper stories, magazine stories, and articles.
So now he's trying to claim there was no document. It wasn't a document, it was other things. So I guess what he's saying is the rest of those people that were talking are lying, and the people who have, I don't know, I guess we'll hear it in the transcript once it eventually comes out in court. According to the indictment, Trump told the individuals that the plan was, quote, highly confidential and, quote, secret. Trump also said, quote, as president, I could have declassified it and now I can't, but it's still a secret. The other interesting thing that happened today, this guy is Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz is a pretty high-profile lawyer. He's a defense lawyer, I think, and he's worked with some pretty shonky characters in the past, although some notary ones as well. But he defended O.J. Simpson, Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, and, of course, Donald Trump as well. He has also defended Julian Assange and some others in there as well. He's a Democrat, but he seems to turn up when the worst of the worst need defending. He's not defending Trump now, but he was part of Trump's indictment defense team, which obviously lost, and he's now talking about Trump getting himself in trouble by not keeping his mouth shut. Have a listen.
In terms of legal strategy, look, he talked too much. The idea that he talked on tape saying he had secret material, it reminds me of a friend of mine apparently gave him a gift some years ago, which was a fish that was caught and stuffed and framed, and the fish under it, it says, if I had only kept my mouth shut, I'd still be swimming. Trump did not keep his mouth shut. This tape recording, whether it ends up convicting him or not, is going to be one of the worst couple of minutes of his life.
And there's one more clip I'm going to show you with Alan Dershowitz, because he talks here to Chris Comer's got a new show. I don't know what the fuck this is, News Nation or something. I don't know. But it's Dershowitz again. This is a really interesting point, because basically there's like 37 counts or 37 charges within this indictment. But Dershowitz says there's only really 2 that are of serious trouble for Trump. and those are the ones where we understand there to be a tape. I'll play it for you rather than preempt it and then play it. So have a listen to what this. It's interesting. He tries to distance himself. I think you can tell that he tries to distance himself because maybe of his connection to Trump. But still, have a listen to what he says specifically about why the indictments, the two indictments that involve the audio recording, are significant trouble for Trump.
Well, this is a much stronger indictment than many people anticipated. It's clearly the strongest indictment that Donald Trump ever faced. And the most important and the most difficult part of the indictment for Trump are two paragraphs, paragraph 34 and paragraph 35. In paragraph 34, there is a tape recording, so you don't have to worry about lawyers' credibility or flip witnesses. His own voice is saying, "See, as president, I could have declassified it," holding up a paper. Now I can't, but this is still a secret. That may not be a smoking gun, but it's a gun, and it's a very important piece of evidence, and it's enough to convict based on this terrible espionage law, which is broad and vague and never should have been enacted. Every liberal for the last 100 years has opposed it. Now they're applauding it because it's being used against Trump. But there's enough in that one statement to convict him of knowingly possessing unauthorized classified material. The fact that the classified material may have been about a plan to attack Iran is not technically relevant under the statute, but if the judge lets that in, it will obviously be deeply prejudicial to the jury. So
the point is that no lawyer has to make a case for that. In other words, it's Trump saying it. No, so the reason that it's so problematic, these two parts of the indictment, is no lawyer has to convince a jury or convince a judge at what Trump was saying, because Trump's saying it. So that's why Dershowitz in that conversation also says if it was him, he'd go narrow. He'd just go on like those two charges and go for that, and not all the other 37, 38 charges. And that's the point that Dershowitz is making, is that because it's Trump's own words on this recording, it's Trump's own voice. The other thing is that there are some on the right trying to claim things like AI voices. Trump hasn't said that. So again, I mean, his lawyers may have been able to make a case that how do we even know this is Trump? But because Trump hasn't said it, he's wanted to engage about this. He's actually doing himself a disservice, by, there's that saying, hoisted by one's own petard. It's a little bit what's going on now. So either what he said on tape, i.e. these tapes, or what he's saying in interviews, those interviews will now be used as evidence against him. They're allowed to be submitted into a court case. That's why lawyers tell you to remain silent. Don't say anything. Because the interview that he just had with Brett Baer and others are going to be now used, as you used to hear in that program Cops, as evidence against him. So his own words will be a very good reason why he may be convicted. Now, will he see jail time? Yada, yada, yada. Probably not. We know about the, possibly multiple tier justice system, but certainly two-tier justice system when it comes to the wealthy and the not wealthy. But there's every chance that if he's going to get convicted, it'll be based on his own stupid, big, fat mouth. And when I say that, I guess what I mean is in a moment where he could have just remained silent, i.e. he didn't have to do those interviews. So, there's the Trumpian story, as I'm calling it, the Trump date, the update on Trump. Right, we will keep trucking and we will keep moving on. And we will hopefully get to see Chewy before we wrap up for the night. I should check my text message. I know you guys, you know that I always struggle to keep up with the texts when you guys are, when I'm by myself, but I will keep an eye on it if I can. News Nation is the TV channel based in Chicago. It's kind of a new channel for former CNN and Fox News reporter and Bill O'Reilly contribute to the channel. Former CNN and Fox News reporters and Bill O'Reilly contribute to the channel. All right, fair enough. Yep, Free Soul says can't help himself. It just is what it is. I think they've already had testimony from people who were there anyway, confirming what he has said. Yeah, but I guess one of the things is, it may not be in a court of law, you may not be able to do this, but in the court of public opinion, you can say, well, they're all out to get me. But if it's your voice saying it, your words saying, this document is classified, as president, I could have declassified it, but I didn't, and now I can't, I can't think of a way you'd really spin that. I just can't. I don't know. I was very busy, LOL. Yep. All right. Let's move on, shall we? Thank you for your messages. I do appreciate that. Lars, one more from Lars. Hoisted by his own petard is correct. Trump got elected because he would always be in the news, because he would always talk loud, still can't shut up, but is no longer beneficial. Interesting point, Lars. Well, you know what? It may no longer be beneficial in the bigger picture, but in the smaller picture, it still may get him to be the Republican nominee. So I guess it depends what we think of as no longer beneficial. Maybe no longer beneficial to get him elected president, but may be enough to get him to be the Republican nominee. Don't know. Right. So the Michael Wood situation was also yesterday. It has still had news coming out today. I'm going to play you the story from News Hub tonight, which is a shortened version of the whole overall drama. But there's a couple of things I want to get to and talk to about it. And one is, there's two ways to look at this, right? If you shit on the floor, that sounds really weird. If your kid shits on the floor, you clean it up quickly. You make the room better. It's a really bad analogy, actually. Sorry, it doesn't work at all, what I'm thinking, because it's not fixing anything. If there are problems that you have to address and you address them and you make things better, that can be a good thing in the long run, even though in the moment it is causing pain. What's happened with Michael Wood and others, the Nash situation and stuff, in the minute right now, there's pain with them. In the long run, based on what Hipkins has said they're now going to do, might actually make politics in New Zealand a shitload better. And actually, I put out a tweet today or yesterday, or must have been today. I was very busy on Twitter today because I've been off it for a week and I couldn't help myself. In the long run, I think that actually, if Hipkins can start pushing the new policies, if that's the right word, practices within Labour onto other parties, in other words, challenging them to do what he said Labour's going to do now, it would make it better for everybody. Because the new ideas and the new policies that Labour are bringing in around conflict of interest, every party should be doing. But I wonder, there hasn't been much noise about this from the right, from the new policy ideas, because I wonder if they don't actually want to start checking too deeply into their closets for what skeletons may fall out. Now, I'm not doing that in the defence. If anything, you guys know from watching this that 2 weeks ago we said Michael Wood should go. We were on record saying after the airport shares he shouldn't be doing, he should be gone, right? So people who have been having a crack at me on Twitter today, when they do, I'm like, well, you don't know me. You don't watch the show. I don't value your opinion. Because 2 weeks ago we said Michael Wood should be gone based on the airport shares. He shouldn't have his ministerial positions anymore. So this is actually just 2 weeks too late. So the right thing's happened, in my opinion. We called it then. It's happened now. So for people who are doing whataboutism on some of my tweets today, then you haven't been listening very closely to what we've been saying, because we said he should have gone 2 weeks ago. But the upside from it, perhaps, is the new policies that Labour's going to bring in, which will make, if Chippy was here right now, you know what he'd be saying. Chippy's position is always, you should have to sell all of your shares anyway. You shouldn't be allowed any investments. Me and Chippy disagree on that, but that's where Chippy sits. That's where my compadre and the Wookmeister goes. I'm not quite there with him, but we're certainly on the side of this should have been sorted out 2 weeks ago. It's been sorted out now on some level, and I think the fallout from it may be useful to all political parties. So let's have a look at, this is just the News Hub story from tonight. So this is an update on where we're at right now before we move into what Labour has decided to do.
With former Minister Michael Wood gone to ground, the Prime Minister is being forced to clean up his resignation fallout. News Hub's obtained a more detailed timeline of how many times the Cabinet Office had to nag Wood to sell his Auckland Airport shares.
And tonight we can reveal Wood didn't recuse himself from even more decisions which he should have. Political reporter Amelia Wade wades through all of Wood's warnings.
The PM in his happy place, the hut, flanked by one of his dwindling number of ministers. Putting on a brave face and sharing some locker room secrets.
My body is a temple.
Thinking of a change of career? But it's the secrets which were kept from the PM that got Michael Wood in trouble.
Yesterday would have been a very difficult day for him.
Perhaps as much difficulty as the Cabinet Office had in getting Wood to stop ghosting them. The saga starts in November 2020 when Wood admits he has shares in Auckland Airport. He's told to think about getting rid of them. Woods is then asked to confirm he's divested them. No response. In early December, calls and emails, Wood says he actually hasn't...
You got to have to say now, this is such a long list of complete balls ups, right? You have to say that it's intentional. I mean, you can't come to any other conclusion. You have to say, I guess I should be careful. I don't want to be litigated against. So I'll take a half step back, not because I think this, but just to be safe and go, you could easily come to the conclusion. You could easily come to the conclusion that Wood kept these shares on purpose for whatever reason, I don't know. But when we get through this timeline, what is it, a dozen times, and actively saying no, or it's going to happen this week, or whatever. I know I said last week I'm terrible at sticking to a timeline and getting things done, but there gets to a point you kind of go, you're not just terrible at getting to things and getting things done, you're actually avoiding them for a reason. So absolutely fair criticism, and most people would probably come to that conclusion.
Gotten around to it yet, and he'll do it over the break.
That's almost a bald-faced lie.
And he hasn't given me an explanation for why it is that he was indicating to the Cabinet Office that they had been sold when clearly they hadn't.
It goes on. In March 2021, the Cabinet Office calls to check in again. They don't hear back and so assume the shares are gone. June, the Cabinet Office follows up again and is told Wood has told his share broker to get rid of them. July, Wood has sent a letter. December, another check. Still no response. Then there's more checks, and in March, Wood's office says it is happening this week. May, the Cabinet Office asks, did it happen? The response, not quite.
The documentation that we've seen suggests that he has misled the Cabinet Office, and that's a pretty serious thing.
And it just keeps going. In January this year, another check. And then in March, the Cabinet Office sat him down. And to their faces, he tells them he's intending to divest, but still hasn't done so. Then you know the rest.
Did Michael Wood mislead the Cabinet?
He certainly did not disclose interests which he should have.
A News Hub can reveal all the while Michael Wood had his Auckland Airport shares, there were 5 requests for support from the airport to him as Transport Minister, but Michael Wood only delegated 2 of those to his Associate Minister. Wood has not responded to News Hub's request for comment.
That's totally unacceptable. New Zealanders deserve and expect better from their government.
Are you confident that Michael Wood recused himself from every decision that he needed to?
No, I'm not, and I think that was clear yesterday.
And it's that uncertainty which saw Michael Wood off on his bike. Amelia Wade.
Got to do a joke at the end, eh? On your bike, Mike. And none of those criticisms from whoever that was from ACT. Obviously, David Seymour has kept all of his MPs under lock and key for the past 2.5 years, whoever that was. But also from Luxon, all completely fair, completely valid. No arguments. I mean, honestly, what arguments can you actually put out there? And what we don't do here is, whataboutism, and there's lots of questions to be had around. What about the other side? It's like, no, this is a singular individual conversation. Doesn't mean there's not other ones to be had. But this is all fair, 100% fair. Now, what may come from this could be very good for New Zealand, right? Very good for New Zealand. So this was a statement. This actually, ironically, you go searching for this, it's quite hard to find on the internet. I came across it this morning, I think on Twitter, amongst my several hours on Twitter today, catching up with everything. And then I went back looking for it this afternoon when I came in to set up the show, and I found I really struggled to find the information. I don't know whether that's because the media is just not covering it. Maybe it's not interesting enough. Maybe if it bleeds, it leads. It's not good enough. But this may actually make a huge difference in the New Zealand political landscape if this was to become something that all parties sort of followed. So after this whole debacle, this is what Labour has decided to do, right? So this is a statement released a couple of days ago. It was, I know yesterday, because I'm sorry, my days are messed up. So this was released yesterday about the resignation. This is now what Labour is going to do, right? This is a Labour Party policy now. This is the Prime Minister speaking. As a result, I've agreed to the following 5 changes to tighten up the disclosure regime for ministers. First, Cabinet Office will move to quarterly reporting of conflicts of interest to the Prime Minister. Currently, Prime Ministers are only advised of new interests as part of the annual review or an ad hoc basis as a particular issue arises. So in other words, what's that? Quarterly? So 4 times a year. This will be looked at by the Prime Minister's office. Second, there will be an escalation process if a minister is not engaging fully with the process or following advice on the management of a conflict. Cabinet Office will now escalate the matter rapidly and directly to the Prime Minister to avoid the situation where a minister can repeatedly ignore their guidance. That's a pretty serious charge. Repeatedly ignore their guidance implies to me that they're saying that Wood also made an active choice not to do this. It wasn't just, yeah, Mum, I haven't tidied my room yet, I'll get around to it. There was an active choice in that. Can repeatedly ignore their guidance. That's an action. I am ignoring you. It's actually quite a serious and harsh critique. Third, there will now be in-person annual reviews with each minister to discuss their conflicts. At the moment, the annual review of ministers' interests is conducted by, is conducted by way of a letter at the end of the financial year. An in-person meeting will ensure that any issues can be more directly addressed and resolved. Fourth, each minister will have to nominate a dedicated person in their office to support them with the conflict of interest process. This means another person in their office is aware of their conflicts and can act as a second pair of eyes to assist them in the appropriate management of them. Fifth, the conflict disclosures will become a standing item at the start of each cabinet or cabinet committee meeting. The Institute of Directors recommends maintaining an interest register as a standing board meeting agenda item, but that has not been the past or current practice for cabinet or cabinet committee meetings. Really good, strong things. Maybe some are going to critique that and say they're just trying to cover their ass. However they're doing it, good, strong things that will help actually the overall political process be more transparent and be more, I don't know, what's the word? Trustworthy. For us, the public, the voters, to be able to trust it. One additional thing, says the PM, I've also sought advice on a full restrictions regime on shareholdings for ministers as well. So, as I said, this is a shit show. It's terrible, no question about that. I do think the pearl clutching from National is a bit much, but we all know that National, even up to and including John Key, have been through similar sorts of things like this. I'm not saying exactly the same, but conflicts of interest, etc., etc., etc. But you know, this is a good place to go to. Whether they'll get points for it from the public, whether it'll make a big difference, I don't know. Is it just window dressing? I don't know. But the words that they're saying are good. The words that they're saying are the right words at the moment. I'm just having a look at the messages that have come in. Let's get to a few of these because I've got a few other things to say about them. Just actually, I'll leave those ones that have already been through. A couple on what we're just talking about now. Oh no, that's actually about Trump. Sorry, I put the wrong one up. How much tapes would stand up in court now with AI or someone about Trump? I might as well do them all then. Give them enough ropes talking about Trump. And the hypocrisy regarding investing in rental property makes a mockery of conflicts of interest rules. Yeah, I agree with you, Guru. And that'll be something that I think will chase Christopher Luxon for the rest of the cycle, that he is making decisions that financially advantage him as a property investor. Gary says, sadly being disappointed by Labour MPs, I had high expectations of isn't a new experience. So there you go. Gary's not that stoked about it, and I think they're completely fair to be so. Yep. Look, how about we treat MPs who own multiple properties when discussing tax benefits? Capital. Yep. Look, I agreed with all of that, but what I'm not going to do is whataboutism. I'm not going to go, no, what about fucking Luxon with all his houses? It doesn't equal out what's gone on. It's a fair and it's a valid question to ask, but it doesn't equal out what's been going on. Got to say as well, with this being such a bad time in the news media cycle for Labour under this, it is surprising to see in the latest polls Prime Minister Christopher Hipkins is benefiting in the latest poll, rising back to 38% as preferred Prime Minister, a 6-point rise, which brings him back to near his honeymoon level of 39% in January. National leader Luxon has dropped to his worst result in the Talbot Mills series, down to 22%, while ACT leader David Seymour held steady on 12%, well ahead of any other small party. So there's another question to ask for these for this political world, and that's pretty simply, how on earth, in this current climate of Labour finding issue with some things, are National still not able to get over the line with it? You know what I'm saying? It's like, how? And it's not a defence, and it's not saying we're fine, but if Labour's got some issues, he's an issue, there's no question about that, he's an issue, but National still cannot make inroads, what does that say for National? So let's say that National was right, this is the worst pardon me, the worst political party run of the country that there's been for a very, very long time. Terrible. Oh, look what they're doing. What are they doing? They're terrible. They're awful. Well, if that's the case, what does that mean about National, who's not making any inroads? Maybe it's because, like, what is it? That Luxon's not a businessman, he's just a board member. Maybe that's a part of it. Maybe. Mate. Gareth, yep. I mean, is this Labour or is this everybody? Running a bit low on quality MPs now. JN says some good may come out of a bad day. Yeah, maybe. Look, as I said, I think if the broader political world took on board those 5 steps, it would make for a much more trustworthy cabinet. Alrighty. I was hoping we would have seen Chewy by now. Chewy is driving between Wamaru and Timaru as we speak, because I know he was chomping at the bits to talk about Mr. Luxon and Teslas. Maybe I'll just give us a quick so for you, those guys who are listening to us on the audio podcast, I'm just texting live Chewy to see where he's at. About to chat Luxon. There you go. I'll just text Chewy. You watch this. I've just texted Chewy, and it'll be like pudding because he knows what's coming up. Although he might be watching us. Chewy, if you're watching us, you can say g'day in the chat. Yep. Atheist also says, what is a quality MP? Simon says, I think the current National Party is the worst opposition in New Zealand history, only after David Cunliffe's Labour Party. David Cunliffe, I'm embarrassed to be a man. That Cunliffe. Pardon me. Right, let's go have a look at the Luxon conversation. Because it is one that's been going on for a couple of days now. I think it started at the end of last week. But there is some things we want to add to it. And obviously it's one of the biggest news stories. Well, it's not one of the biggest news stories, but we're constantly, in fact, I think during our best ofs, it might have even been last night, I played a clip about Kerry Woodham, who I saw in the airport yesterday. Just skated past her, didn't make eye contact. Was all like, why do people don't trust Luxon? Why don't they trust him? And this is why. This is why people don't trust Christopher Luxon. They don't trust Christopher Luxon because he speaks out both sides of his mouth. He says on one level, that it's critical. Look, he's critical that wealthy people are getting tax rebates whilst he's taking a tax rebate. Now, I know there's going to be arguments saying, well, he's entitled to it, everyone is. I agree. But therefore, what you've got, you know how, I'm sure some of you guys are aware of this. We get this a little bit. It's kind of hilarious how we get called shills We get called shills just doing it for the money, right? Because we disagree with some conspiracy theorists. What a shill is someone who will literally just do anything for the money, even if it's against their, their ideologies, their personal beliefs, even the truth. Someone who has an ideology or a personal belief that wealthy people should not be taking discounts for Teslas and then does it is the dictionary definition of a shill. Because they're going against their ideology, they're going against what they think, and they're just going, well, it's money, I might as well take it. It's the ugliest form of well, not even capitalism, but just of morality, that you think something is wrong, you don't think people should do it or get it, yet you do it. Now, that means one of two things. You either don't think it's wrong, and you're just voicing what you think is going to get you elected, or you have no morals. They're really the only two conclusions. Because if it ends up that, they're the only two conclusions. If it's morally wrong, if it's wrong for the government, like for the government to do it, and you still do it, then you either don't think it's wrong and you're lying, or you've got no morals. Yeah, it's being called a hypocrite, as it's being said in there. But either one of those things. Now, I'm just thinking which one of these two that I'll play for you first of all. Let's play, and I've got a bunch. What I do is, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll have seen some of these, because I tend to think on Twitter. Like, I'll put a thought out there, and then that'll be something that I'm thinking about during the day that I'll then bring back to the show. So I'm actually going to show some of my tweets that I put out today as well, only because they're kind of my notes to me, so we can talk about it. This was a couple of nights ago, right? And this was Christopher Luxon when, actually, before I do this, speaking of Jenna Lynch, I'll do it at the end. Remind me, people, about Jenna Lynch at the end. Speaking to Jenna Lynch in the halls of power when she is asking him about the rebates he's taken for his family's Teslas. This is what he had to say very quickly to her.
How many times has the Luxon family claimed the clean car discount?
I'm not aware my wife owns a Tesla.
Repeatedly called it your Tesla. Why are you all of a sudden saying it's your wife?
I use it occasionally. That's what I mean by that. But it's my wife's Tesla.
How many times have you claimed the clean car discount?
My wife owns a Tesla, and it's not any of your business.
I don't know if you hear at the very end here. Obviously, the mics are live in the studio. You listen to the laugh. That'll be the people. That'll be the hosts in the studio, not Jenna Lynch. Have a listen again. that laugh there. That was because the mics were still hot in the studio, and even the hosts on News Hub. I'm not sure what night that was. Might have been Michael Roberts. Even they were laughing when he heard say it's none of your business. Now, I really want to get to that point. I really, really, really do want to get to that point. But let's have a quick look at the conversations. That was from last night. This was from this morning on breakfast. Still talking about this as an issue, and then we'll jump into the actual part of the conversation, which is, my wife, as Borat would say.
Mr. Luxon, are you a wealthy Tesla owner?
Well, firstly, good morning, Anna, and I loved your lead-in music. That was great. Look, as I've said before, my wife owns a Tesla. They're her financial affairs, and that's not up for discussion. I'm the politician, not her or my family, so I think that's fair.
Has the clean car discount...
I want to play that again, because I made a stupid noise over that. Just these are the words that are really important to hear. They're her financial affairs, and that's not up for discussion. Just remember that, right? That's one we're going to come back to.
Her financial affairs, and that's not up for discussion. I'm the politician, not her or my family, so I think that's fair.
Has the clean car discount been obtained at the point of purchase for that car? You say you drive it.
Again, it's my wife's car, and those are her financial affairs, and they're not up for discussion. But what is up for discussion is that we stand by our position, which is the clean car discount doesn't make sense. Those that can afford to pay, don't need a subsidy, and frankly, those that want to buy a ute and have no alternative end up having to pay a tax. It's the same argument that I've been making around prescription fees, for example. Those that can afford to pay should, those that can't should be supported, because when we target government spending in a much better way, and this government's been very poor at that, that gives us, we save money and we get to do better things with that money that get outcomes for New Zealanders. And so the point is about the policy we stand by very strongly.
Okay, but is that not a hypocritical position to take, given that you are quite accepting of people who do take the discount? It's perfectly acceptable to take it, but you don't think it should exist.
Well, it's government policy, right? So the government...
So what he's saying is what I was saying before. If the government's going to give it to me, I'm just going to take it. Even though I disagree with it, even though I think it's wrong, if the government's going to give me money, I'm just going to take it. I'm just going to take the money.
It has policy, and that's what we're opposing as the opposition, to say, look...
We're opposing it, but not enough to not take it. as a personal investment. So I'm going to take it. That's the shill. That's the shill part. Someone who will go against their personal ideology just for money.
I'm sorry, this clean car discount makes no sense. Those that can afford shouldn't have to be subsidised, and those that have no alternative shouldn't have to pay a tax.
So it shouldn't exist. It's not fair, but I'm taking it. So either I'm taking it or my wife, I'm embarrassed by her. I'm ashamed and embarrassed that my wife took it because she didn't need to. Which is it? Because they're your only options again, Mr. Luxon.
And it gets you back to the universal versus targeting argument. You know, we at a time when this country's in recession, every dollar matters. It's taxpayer money. Why don't we make sure that every dollar is better targeted so that we can do better things that get better outcomes for New Zealanders? This is a tough time for New Zealand. You know, this country just went into recession last week. You know, the economic situation for New Zealand is really difficult. Kiwis are skipping meals because they can't afford food. They are having to...
So all the wealthy people don't need to do this. This is why everything's tough, but we still did it. Hello, Chewy.
Hello, mate.
Turn your camera sideways,
I can
sir.
barely hear you.
How long have you been doing this for? Turn your camera sideways. There we go. Watching. Hey.
It's not great, I'll be honest.
All right. Well, listen, we're just going to play this. You can keep listening to it. I'm not cutting this off yet. And then we haven't had any of the debatey type stuff yet, and I know you want to get into it. So let's go with Mr. Luxon fumbling over. We shouldn't be giving this money out. Morally, we're against it. Policy-wise, we're against it. But the Luxon family is still doing it. So we're still going to do it.
Cancel kids' activities because they have to pay their mortgages. So that, you know, we need every taxpayer dollar working hard and getting outcomes for Kiwis.
Yes, you make a very fair point, and this is a $73,000 car that gets a more than $8,000 clean car discount. So if you're going to be so opposed to it, would you not make a moral stand that if you don't need the discount, then you shouldn't take it if you are so vehemently opposed to it being a government policy?
Well, again, it's government policy. There's lots of government policies, and
that you take advantage of that you don't believe in.
Strongly. We really oppose this policy. We think it's wrong. You know, that people that can afford shouldn't get subsidised, and those that actually have no alternative shouldn't have it.
We think it's wrong, but we'll do it. So actively, that means that we're doing something that we think is wrong. That's the definition of a shill.
Tax. And so, you know, I stand by our position, but it is government policy. You know, there are lots of government policies across, you know, all aspects of life in New Zealand. And we're saying to you, this one doesn't make a lot of sense, as does, you know, the reason for those that can afford to pay for prescriptions. It's the same thing, because actually it's money that we free up, we save, and we get to spend on other things that would matter more to New Zealanders and make a bigger difference in their lives.
If you personally went and bought a car today that was eligible for the clean car discount, would you claim it?
Well, I drive I share a car with my son typically, and I also drive a scooter. So it's a hypothetical question.
It is a hypothetical question.
Yeah.
Would you claim it? Do you think you should claim it?
Well, I tell you, yeah, it's government policy. So, you know, people are entitled to claim lots of things around government policies, or, you know, that exist around the country. But the bigger issue here is the government is wasting a huge amount of money. You know, it's government spending's up 80% under this government. Do we think we've had an 80% improvement in our economy, our health, our education, our environment, our infrastructure? No. And so the government doesn't understand, you know, wasteful spending isn't appropriate. We have to make every dollar count.
And we're going to participate in that wasteful spending by getting a clean car rebate.
Because someone's woken up today, gone to work, paid their taxes, given the money to the government, and the government's wasting it.
Okay, that was a slightly longer answer than I'd anticipated, but hypothetically, I'm assuming you are implying you would take the discount.
Well, there's policies across government, and all across New Zealand life. And what we're saying is we oppose this policy because, yeah, those that can afford shouldn't be subsidised, and those that don't have an alternative shouldn't have to pay a tax. It's something we feel very strongly about, targeted government spending.
There we go. That's where we're going to end the clip. So those that should be able to afford it should do it, Chewy, like Mr. Luxon, who can't afford to do it, but then they choose not to. Now, I've got some other things to show and play about this, but you're, even though you're saying undisclosed location there, I've already told people where you are, so undisclosed location in the location that you are. Why don't I just throw you the ball, sir? What would you like to jump in on this for?
Yeah, I mean, I said this last week, right? I love coming out of the weekend to find out how Christopher Luxon has fucked up again. and it's spectacular that he got pinged on the Tesla thing last week and then pinged again on another Tesla. And it's not even about the car. It's not even about the rebate. I don't have a problem. Like, more EVs on the road is great. It's just that here is a guy that went so hard on this EV subsidy is pointless, it's going to rich Tesla owners, when he was projecting the entire time. And that he hasn't had a shred of personal integrity to go, you know what, I'm so against this, I'm not going to take it. That would have meant that he ducked this whole thing.
Yeah.
Or if he was a smarter political operator, he would have go, I am going to take it. I'm going to make a show of the fact that I'm me, a millionaire, is claiming the rebate from the government. And then I'm going to make even more political capital by going, you know what, I'm going to take this government rebate and I'm going to donate it to a rural mental health group, or Gumboot Friday, or something that isn't getting enough government funding. He would have made so much political capital, but he's such a poor political operator that he didn't even think about that. And then the moment it's questioned, he throws his wife under the bus and gets all outraged that we're going after her, which we never were.
No. And listen,
it's not the car, it's not the subsidy, it's the hypocrisy. And that it always circles back to one thing. Chris Luxon is bad at this.
There's another couple of parts about this as well. So this is what we have to believe, right? If we believe that he honestly doesn't know that his wife had spent $70,000+ on a car, and he has no knowledge of that, because that's what we have to believe what he's saying, right? He has no knowledge that his wife went out and spent over 70 grand on a car, and then his wife got the rebate. That's just one of kind of two or three things. The first is we have to trust a man with New Zealand's accounts who doesn't know what's going on in his own family accounts. That's a really important point. Or the second thing is his wife can't trust him with their family accounts. So she keeps it to herself. And that's another thing. Do we want to put that person in front and in charge of the government's accounts, whose wife will not divulge to her husband that she's just spent 70 grand? It also puts them in a position of being kind of very affluent and a bit out of touch with the average man. Just that his wife, they're so wealthy that he doesn't even know if my wife goes off and spends 75 grand on a car, I don't need to know. I mean, that's chump change to us. Or is he bullshitting? I mean, it's an option. Is he bullshitting?
All good points. All good points. The other issue that I have, right, is the fact that he says he shares a car with his son. Has anybody checked to see if that car is another Tesla? Because if there's a fourth Tesla in the mix here, I struggle to believe that a man that once took a limo 400 meters across the road to Parliament uses a scooter. There's never been any footage of Luxon on a scooter. So yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go to some of my notes now. My notes are written on Twitter, Chewy, so I apologize for putting my own Twitter feed up because I want to use a quote here, right? So, when it's Luxon's wife, then, quote, they're her financial affairs, and that's not up for discussion, right? But when it's Nanaia Mahuta's husband, National wants an investigation because him profiting off public money is bad, but Amanda Luxon profiting is not at all bad. Now, people have been pushing back pretty heavily against me on that today, saying it's a big difference. No. It might be a difference with how many zeros are on the end, but one husband, why can't we say, well, that's his financial affairs for the husband, and that's not up for discussion? Why does Luxon think that that's an okay thing to say, when actually, if it's the opposing view, not only do they not say it, but they write press releases about it. This week, the New Zealand Herald revealed that Ms. Mahuta was listed as one of the paid panelists working on a contract awarded to her husband's firm for work on a suicide prevention program. This presents even more questions which need answering. That is from the National Party and a National Party policy. So when it's someone's husband, it's up not just for debate, but investigation. Now, people have pushed back against that, so this is what I've said. It's pretty funny having people say comparing Mahuta, sorry, I felt that wrong, husband is nothing like Luxon's wife when it comes to a financial gain from the government. Luxon's situation shows the hypocrisy of a man and the shill that he is, who will do anything for money, even if it goes against his beliefs. Whereas Mahuta's situation was deemed above board with no conflict or evidence of favoritism. So yes, you're right, they're not comparable. Luxon's is much worse. Because Nanaia Mahuta's husband, all fine. This, not prepared to admit as to what's going on. And just for clarity, profiting means, by the dictionary definition, to obtain a financial advantage or benefit. What else would a rebate for a Tesla be? And we've also said this, and because we're fair here, because we said this about Nanaia Mahuta, we suggested that if you share a bank account with someone and you're a minister or a high profile person within government, you should not be getting an advantage from the government going into that bank account because you get an advantage from it. Now, I'm sorry, I don't care how wealthy you are, Mr. Luxon, an $8,000 rebate is an advantage to someone that you're sharing a bank account with. It's the same, albeit taken vastly different sums of money. It's the same principle. And Joey, I've got one other thing. In fact, I'll do my one other thing. Here's my one other thing. So imagine that they found out that Marama Davidson's husband was paying their lawnmower man or woman minimum wage whilst the Greens were fighting for a living wage. So the Greens are fighting for a living wage. Marama Davidson's husband, this is imaginary, before anyone clips it, is paying their lawnmower person minimum wage. Do you honestly believe that the National Party would accept, sorry, my husband pays the lawnmower man and his financial affairs are not up for discussion? I don't think so. I don't think so, Mr. Luxon. That's why the Tesla conversation is relevant, because they wouldn't give it to the opposition. And I've given you a very clear hypothetical that they wouldn't. So we're not going to do it with this. Chewy, yours, sir.
Yeah. I mean, the other example I can think of an MP or a political leader's direct spouse benefiting is of course Judith Collins.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of questions about her husband's dealings and that sort of thing. And yeah, that same sort of thing. It's like, well, no, like, can you not see? We have had so much conversation over the past couple of weeks about conflicts of interest on both sides of the aisle. Like, I mean, I wasn't here for the conversation about Michael Wood, but oh my God, when he had to go, and I just keep coming back to what I said the other week. If you are going to be an MP, clean house, divest, don't give yourself the opportunity to fuck it up. But yeah, it's the hypocrisy. Here I am saving like a mad bastard so I can get an EV and use this EV rebate, which absolutely is working. It's getting more EV cars on the road. It's prompting people to look at them as a valid option. And here's a millionaire on one hand saying, oh no, it's bad, it's taking money away from hardworking tradies and farmers to buy Teslas, and he's the Tesla guy.
So why aren't
hypocrisy?
Now,
it's mind blowing.
The working for farmers, why aren't they kind of going, hang on, Mr. Lux and all their farmers, you're one of the people who is making us pay more for our utes. I mean, because that's actually his example of what's happening with this rebate is ute owners are paying more because of the Tesla owners getting rebates. That's you, Mr. Luxon. That's your family. So where's Groundswell now going after Luxon and going bananas because of him and people like him? They got to pay more for the utes.
He doesn't even have a coherent position on the EV subsidy outside of the fact that it was going to rich Tesla owners. Like, there's nothing else there. He's just EV subsidy bad. Like, he doesn't even have the finesse to go, we think the threshold for the subsidy is too high and we want it to come down $10,000. You know, it only applies to cars up to $6,990. You know, it would rule out a bunch of EVs, and you know, that was the thing, is the whole reason for the subsidy is to get people to buy EVs that will then feed into the secondary market.
Yeah.
But they don't see that. They don't have the finesse to see that. Just very clumsy across the board.
Now, Chewy, thanks for jumping in. But before we wrap up, I'm disappointed to not see you wearing your T-shirt because I haven't told people what the T-shirt yet. You got your T-shirt with you?
Mate, I hurried to get here. I literally got out of the car and ran into the house to try and connect. I almost died 3 times.
I told you not to. I told you not to rush. There we go. There's the other one.
Can you see it wasn't me, mate. It was the 5 Ford Ranger drivers that almost killed me between Oamaru and this undisclosed location.
Okay, I'm going to full screen for a second so you can see. There you go. Well, I've got to turn the banner off. Hang on, I'll turn the banner off. There you go. You got it? Christopher Luxon.
Can I just point out,
a businessman, just a board member. You like that one? I'm coming back.
Can I just point out to our listeners that this has been a very long-term thing because you wanted to model these T-shirts.
Yes.
And you have dropped a lot of weight, so you look good doing it.
I'll tell you a story, bro. So obviously people know I've been away burying my father. I'll bring it downstairs and show you maybe next week. My dad was a Sacred Heart College old boy, as was I. And like at the 100th or 150th school anniversary or whatever it was, they did a bunch of First 15 T-shirts, which were, not T-shirts, sorry, they were jerseys, like with the old leather string tie on them. So like they're from the 1800s, they got that kind of look. And my dad was there in 1958. And so it's got a 58 on the back. And he bought it, and he proudly had it, and all his grandkids wanted it and that kind of stuff. On my 50th birthday, well, I was actually so we missed all the parties and stuff last week. My birthday was the Wednesday, and I missed that because, well, I didn't miss a birthday. The day still happened, but I was in Auckland for it, and obviously I was there by myself. My kids were down here. My partner was down here, so by myself, but with my siblings. On Friday night of last week, we went to a pub to watch the Auckland Blues play the Crusaders, kind of as an homage to Dad, because he was the biggest Blues fan. His religion was rugby. There's no question about that. He was the president of the Auckland Rugby Referees Association for several years, and he was an usher at Eden Park through the 80s, and we used to go as little kids with him and help him put people in their seats and that kind of stuff. And I turned up to the pub on Friday night, not thinking about anything, just going there for the rugby, and all my nieces and nephews were there. And my sisters presented me his 1958 First 15 jersey, and it's a 2XL.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I looked at it and I thought, maybe I'll get into it a few months. And I pulled it on, completely fits. And I just like you're making a bit of a gag now, I just thought, so Dad was just waiting for me to lose about 65 kilos so I could get into this jersey. That's what this is all about. He was just hanging on for long enough so that I'd lose enough weight so I could pull his rugby jersey on. I'll wear it one night next week, but it's to show you what it is. But yeah, little story about some of the time we had in Auckland, and I didn't cry telling that story now because I'm all teared out from the previous week because it's a pretty heavy one. So yeah, so there are some benefits in the current week or so about having lost the weight to where I am right now, and that was one of them. So my sisters took that, and there was a cake, and there were some balloons, and it was a nice night on that Friday night. It was a nice night unless you were a Blues supporter, because they got hammered. And I even said in my speech in the funeral that Dad knew when it was the time to go. He even managed to get out of town before watching that Blues game, because anyone else who watched it will live that for the rest of their life. But he managed to miss it and get out of town. So anyway, so there you go. Hey, let's say this before we sign off. Thanks for jumping in for a bit, Chippy. Thank you to all our patrons, patreon.com/Big Hairy News, if you want to be a part of what we do. Thank you very much for all the kind words from people and for the support you've given us to be a part of this little community we've got, to give us the grace to get out of here and do what we need to do with family while still being able to provide something for you guys. I guess I don't have any other parents to die, so I think I'm fine right up to the election, Chippy. I don't think there'll be any other issues there. But if you want to be a part of what we do, that. And listen, as we've said, Chewy's t-shirt is if the left vote, the left wins. And they're the two designs that we're going to put out. They're going to come out, hopefully, if I can get my Shopify website sorted out, they're going to come out on the 1st of July. There's going to be a 2-week window to order and pay for them, and they'll be getting sent out on the 15th of July. And I don't know whether we'll do one drop a month. Maybe we'll give it a week and then do another 2 weeks, and then give it a week and do another 2 weeks. And if you want to support us, it's a really good way to do it. We want to find a really fair price to get them to you guys. That'll give us a good little margin. That'll help us actually do this thing leading up to the election and keeping on going. I don't know. Anything else you want to mention, Chippy?
No, I think I'm good. yeah, I should be back in the proper studio next week, and it won't be all like I feel like this is a hostage video, like just out of frame. There's a guy going, "Tell them you're being well treated."
There's a lot of people,
and I am being very well treated here.
A lot of people are saying, "Are you in a bunker?" There's a good one there. Nobody puts Chewy in the corner. Lots of friends.
Well, I've got a friend here.
Yep.
Just to keep me company.
Oh.
Hello.
What? And do you want to tell us what you're traveling for? Anything in particular?
I'm just going out to see my brother up in Christchurch. Yeah, just haven't caught up in ages, so just took the opportunity to get out of town.
Very good. Yes, I'll be back up in Auckland in about 2 weeks' time to sort out an apartment that is now needs to be occupied by someone else. So we will move on. All right, dude. Hey, have a fantastic time up there when you start to head back, whenever that's going to be. Drive safe. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Brilliant edition. The last third of this episode was a brilliant edition. The first 2/3, Chewy, pretty average, but the last third, pretty spot on. Thanks, team, for being with us tonight. Really appreciate your support over the last 10 days or so. Look forward to catching up with you tomorrow night. No, it's Thursday, so Monday. See you Monday night from 9 p.m. for a brand new edition, probably from both of us, from our own places in Dunedin, of Big Hairy News. Be safe, and we'll see you when we see you. Hooroo.
Cheers, fam.